social narratives, some of you might be familiar with the term, some of you might not, but the basic idea, the stories we tell, and we hear, and we retell, that help us make sense of the world. They help us navigate culture, social systems, and questions of meaning. And some of them are silly, and some of them are weird, and some of them are sort of subconscious, and others are very overt. And part of the reason we start out with a couple of trailers is because media is often one of the easiest ways to see into a culture's status quo. What are some of the dominant narratives that go on in any given culture? And so, looking at, first of all, the Avengers things, some of the lines that come out of there are pretty amazing, right? Like, in the end, we're all alone, right? And that's not a question, like, that's the premise of the movie. Like, you go into the movie and you accept the idea that in the end, we're alone. And the idea that, sometimes extraordinary men and gentlemen, if you didn't notice, almost all the Avengers are male, need to fight the fights that we can't fight for ourselves, right? So there's another narrative about we're in the end we're alone, and we need a hero, and that hero's probably not you, because you're not extraordinary. But don't worry, we've got some billionaire playboys with cool machines. So you see these things, and then you go to Hot Tub Time Machine, and you see some of the more fun and playful sides of things, like looking for a new level of awesome. That's like one of the great weekend goals of any of us, is like, what could we do this weekend to top what was awesome last time? Those types of questions. But also you see a lot of what can feel like harmless casting, but maybe the question is there something more to the fact that the black guy is the funny guy, and you can go through a lot of different sort of movies, and what do you do with the minority character? You make them funny so that they're approachable or less scary or something like this. So we see these social narratives that they're not necessarily by themselves good or bad. They just are. They're the way we're storytelling creatures, we're meaning-making creatures, and so the way we make sense of the world is through stories.
So, I work in anti-poverty work and that end of the social sector, and who's heard the bootstrap narrative? I mean, somebody tell me, what's the bootstrap narrative?
Pulling each other up by our bootstraps.
Pulling each other up by the bootstraps. I mean, what's the other way to, how else?
If you work hard enough, you can achieve.
Right, it's
Work
the
hard
idea of
enough.
like people need to pull up their bootstraps and get to work if you want to come out of poverty.
Yeah.
It's usually
Yeah, it's
the
the idea.
fun way of hearing it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, it's this idea. It's this narrative that we've bought, and we buy into it, and we create our programs, and we sell our organizations to our funders, and we sell our organizations to other nonprofits based on the idea, based on this narrative of the bootstraps. The idea that it's only a matter of hard work and effort and time, and that if you want it bad enough, you'll get up and stop being lazy and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And that's the narrative that we continue to perpetuate.